people need to realize we are in fire season.
Hold for heat.
When it comes to fire season in the inland Northwest, it's not a question of whether there will be fires, but rather how bad they will be.
The trends over the last 10 years have been towards more severe fire seasons.
And whether you live in a more rural or urban environment, it's important to know your risk.
The greater Spokane community has been identified as the fourth most at-risk community in the state of Washington.
Join KREM 2 News as we take a closer look at this current wildfire season and share important information to make sure your family is prepared. This is Ready for Wildfires. Hello, I'm KREM 2 Chief Meteorologist Jeremy LaGoo. Wildfires are one of the biggest environmental threats in the inland Northwest, and it's only getting worse. Even below average fire years remain a major concern. In our next half hour, we're going to take a closer look at our risk and what you can do to be prepared. But to get started, let's talk about how wildfire season is changing here in the inland Northwest. This is a 1997 BMW M3. More specifically, it's my BMW M3, which means I've rebuilt the engine for more power, and I'm currently yanking out the automatic transmission and replacing it with a manual transmission for more fun. For me, driving cars is a passion. It's where I feel most free. But CO2 emissions from, well, transportation here in the US are a major factor in climate change, and climate change is playing a big role in our fire season here in the inland Northwest.
The trends over the last 10 years have been towards more severe fire seasons due to hotter and drier summers.
That's meteorologist Matt Deere with the Washington Department of Natural Resources. When we talk average fire season now, it means something drastically different than it did, say, 10 years ago. Hotter, drier summers dry out vegetation like trees, brush, or even grass, and that allows things to ignite faster and fires to grow more rapidly and burn hotter, becoming more devastating. Last year felt like a calm fire season, especially in recent memory. But in the big picture, it really wasn't as calm as it might have seemed.
In Washington, we still burned about 170,000 acres, which compared to the last 10 years is about 200,000 acres below normal. However, if you look at our average acres burned between 1992 and 2010, in that time frame, we only averaged 140,000 acres a year.
The average fire season now burns almost double the acres in the state of Washington than it did, say, 10 years ago. And that seems to be a trend across much of the western US. And that means it's time to change how we think about fire season. Right now, things are looking good. Our cool, wet spring gave life to the snowpack in the mountains and filled our vegetation with moisture, meaning potential fuels are harder to ignite and it's harder to get those fires to spread, for now. Forecasts indicate a below average start to fire season. Thanks to our cool, wet spring, it looks like we're pretty good through the start of summer. In general, our summers have been hotter and drier, meaning our fuels like grass, trees, or brush dry out, and that makes them more prone to burning. So overall, a fire that might start in a calm season and just fizzle out has the ability to grow faster, spread quicker, and burn hotter, becoming much more devastating. This year looks to be no exception to our recent pattern. We currently sit under an El Nino watch, with a 60% chance of an El Nino forming by July. What that would mean is an even hotter, even drier summer than what has become our new norm. Because of that forecast, long-range outlooks put the possibility of more devastating wildfires occurring later on this summer. It essentially boils down to what starts the fires. Historically, lightning is responsible for some of our biggest wildfires in the Northwest. Lightning strikes in remote areas can spark fires that are hard for crews to access, allowing the fires to grow more freely. As storm activity calms later in summer, it's all on us. Our primary ignition source of wildfires in the Northwest is humans. That includes things like campfires, fireworks, power lines, cigarettes, tow chains on trucks, and a whole lot more. There's no magic crystal ball that can predict where our fires will be or how many we'll see in a given season. But what we do know is that fire season is getting worse, and that is thanks to our hotter, drier summers across the Northwest. It boils down to fire weather days. Hot, dry, windy conditions are when we see most fire ignitions and most rapid fire growth. By exercising caution on extreme fire danger days, we can make a difference. The hot, dry weather pattern that set in the month of July really dried out much of the Northwest, increasing our significant wildfire danger. Updated outlooks from the National Interagency Fire Center put much of the Northwest at significant fire risk in August and September as we close out some of the drier months of summer. But to get a better idea of how Washington State prepares for wildfires, KREM 2's Nicole Hernandez sat down with Hillary Franz, who leads the state's wildfire force as the Commissioner of Public Lands.
We had our warmest May on record. I know that really dried out a lot of our land. So what are the experts saying? What's the outlook for this season as for how intense it's going to be?
So I will say all maps are showing that we are not only in high fire risk, but it's only going to continue for many, many months. We've been watching what's been happening in Alberta. We sent air resources and our firefighters to that. That is not something that is so removed from possibility in our state. The good news is we are more well positioned than we have ever been before. This year we'll have 37 air resources, exclusive use. They're literally blanketing the entire state. We also have, we set a goal to have 90% of our fires kept to below 10 acres. 6 of the last 7 years we have been able to do that, even with historic wildfire conditions and an ongoing drought that we're also again seeing this year.
And obviously you were talking about those resources. I know we're part of partnerships to help send some of those resources to other regions when they're fighting fire. So how do we balance sending resources and helping other places with making sure we still have the resources here?
We are going to take care of Washington first. So we moved those contracts to exclusive use so they are under our control at all times. When Alberta was on fire in May, we did send resources, our air resources to them. We will not distribute them when Washington State has the urgency and needs to have those air resources and the firefighters and equipment close.
And as we look back on some of the heat that we've seen for our June compared to other years, what did June look like?
So we have moved to PL level 2, which just tells you that there is sort of a higher level of risk. And we started that in June. It was the earliest we have ever moved to a PL 2. June was hotter and drier than usual. It's why we've already had almost 600 fires and 17,000 acres burned.
What are some ways that fires can spark that maybe we don't realize that we're doing?
One, if you have any kind of metal dragging from your car, like a chain, you lose a tire because your tire wasn't secure and metal hits the asphalt, it'll create a spark. That spark quickly flies over to the side of the road and then you can quickly have a fire. If people park, they might be going to an outdoor venue or and they park their car on that grass and their exhaust is thousands of degrees, it's hot, it touches that grass because the grass is high, you'll have a fire. People need to think about their backyard charcoal burners. Sometimes people aren't safe and they dump their hot charcoals out. That can quickly start a fire. And then we urge people about campfires, charcoal, as well as target shooting and fireworks.
Still ahead, an El Nino summer. We'll explain what this big weather shift means for the inland Northwest. Plus,
does an above average snowpack translate into a more or less severe fire season?
Our Verify team looks into how snowpack affects our wildfire risk. Welcome back to our KREM 2 News Special, ready for wildfires. This year is bringing a big shift in our weather. As El Nino conditions move in, meteorologist Thomas Patrick explains what that means for us here in the inland Northwest.
A couple months ago, we were starting to track the beginnings of El Nino into the summer season. And now that we are here, well, El Nino is also here, already at a moderate strength as well, where the equatorial Pacific waters are already about 1 degree Celsius above normal. So very clearly into that El Nino weather pattern. And it's only forecasted to strengthen through the rest of the summer and perhaps even the fall. And it should stay that way even into winter as well. At the high end of some forecasts, not just a moderate El Nino, but into a strong or potentially record-breaking El Nino, which could top some of the values seen back in 1997 and 2015. Now, El Nino tends to influence our winter weather pattern more than the summer season, but we are seeing the influence of that hot and dry weather pattern amplified for the Pacific Northwest, in combination with the Atlantic Basin also being above normal temperature-wise, and Canada has already had record-breaking heat through the months of May and June. So the rest of the summer season still very much likely to be above normal temperature-wise and favoring a below-average precipitation profile. That all in combination means our wildfire outlook very much is trending above average, especially for the second half of the summer season. Initially, we were just thinking Canada was going to get the worst of it, but because of El Nino and already the record-breaking heat in locations across the globe, that certainly is influencing our weather pattern here at home for the Pacific Northwest. So yes, above average wildfire conditions are expected for the rest of the summer season.
The greater Spokane community has been identified as the fourth most at-risk community in the state of Washington.
Up next, reducing the risk. See what you can do to make sure your house is wildfire ready. As we go to break, one term you hear a lot during wildfire season is contained. But what does that mean? KREM 2's Tom Sherry explains.
Planes and helicopters get a lot of attention in wildfires, but they mainly play a supporting role, slowing the fires down. This helps firefighters to build their main product, which is a fire line, a physical line in the earth, cleared of things that can burn. They cut line with bulldozers and hand crews, hacking out trees and brush as they go. Line can also be an existing highway or road. If crews keep the fire from jumping over it, calling a fire contained means making a fire line all around the fire. Then firefighters work toward control, putting out the hot spots to keep it from jumping over the line. In a really big fire, that can take months to do.
With wildfire season here, our Verify team has been getting several questions about what we can expect. KREM 2's Mark Hanrahan takes a closer look at the relationship between snowpack and wildfires.
KREM 2 viewer Nat asks, will all the heavy snow we've gotten this winter help prevent the wildfires from getting so bad this summer? Our sources to verify this question are Nick Bond, a research scientist at the University of Washington who also serves as the state climatologist, and Matthew Deere, a meteorologist for the Washington Department of Natural Resources. First, let's start with the snowpack. It was a good snow year in the inland Northwest, with several of our local ski resorts extending their seasons because the snow just kept falling. Both Deere and Bond say Washington finished the season with a slightly higher than average snowpack for most regions in the state.
Does an above average snowpack translate into a more or less severe fire season?
Right. So, yeah, you're right on point. We have had pretty good snowpack across Washington this year, including in the Columbia Mountains, the Northern Rockies, out towards Spokane. However, a snowpack doesn't necessarily correlate directly with fire season.
Deere says the heavy snow is certainly good for things like replenishing reservoirs and our streams and rivers, but it's not the best predictor for how severe our fire season will be. A better predictor, the temperatures we see in June, July, August, and September.
So while good snowpack is really beneficial for the ecosystem, it's beneficial for the streams and the hydrology of the area, it doesn't really correlate that much with how many acres we're going to burn in the summer.
State climatologist Nick Bond agrees. High heat, low humidity, and of course the wind are the biggest drivers of wildfires, and predicting those factors weeks and months in advance with any kind of accuracy certainly isn't easy.
How the fire season is going to play out is really dependent on the weather going ahead, and of course our crystal ball is a little bit murky in that regard.
But to get an idea of what we can expect, Bond and Deere look at historical trends, and both say the data isn't great news for wildfire potential.
The odds are, again, we're just going to be a little bit on the dry, warm side, and I'm just hoping that we don't have any devastating heat waves or any combination of heat and wind.
So we can verify, no, our snowpack is not a good indicator for how our wildfire season will play out. Rather, our summer heat is a better predictor.
When it comes to wildfires, there are several things you can do to lessen your risk. Janelle Finch shows us what's being done to reduce the impact in Spokane County.
Spokane fire officials say Spokane County may hear more of this. Last month, the Washington Department of Natural Resources awarded 3 Spokane agencies with wildfire defense grant funds. Now and over the next 2 to 3 years, Wildland Resource Planner Nick Jeffries says that money will be used to thin out at least 1,000 acres of urban forest.
By thinning out the trees, not only do we give them good forest health, but we reduce the risk of catastrophic wildfire. Again, we're not alleviating the ability for fire to burn, we're reducing that risk.
Even though wildfires can't be stopped, officials say there are ways to reduce the potential impact on property. This includes creating defensible spaces, cleaning pine needles out of gutters, and keeping lawns watered. The Spokane County Fire District 3 chief says people living in Spokane County are at a higher risk when compared to the rest of the state.
The greater Spokane community has been identified as the 4th most at-risk community in the state of Washington. And particularly concerns around southwest Spokane County, where we're at today, and North Spokane County, the Deer Park area, given the fuels in the area, the terrain, the weather patterns.
Jeffries says everyone should ask how well their property can withstand a wildfire. This isn't just a rural concern.
If you have a wood shake roof, a cedar shake roof, and needles in your gutters, you are just as much at risk in that urban forest as somebody in a wildland forest.
When wildfires do start, evacuation notices often go out. It's always important to follow the alerts, but as KREM 2's Tom Sherry explains, sometimes you might not want to wait to get that alert.
A lot of us are used to getting alerts for, well, everything. But in a fire, you don't have to wait to be told. Alert systems don't always work. There's no substitute for your own judgment to decide when to go. Deadly wildfires don't always look like a wall of flames. Thick black smoke blowing over your head and falling embers are signs to get out. Don't be the person in your group who stays behind to save the house or put together one more box of stuff to save. Your loved ones may need your eyes and ears for job number 1, staying alive. Nothing in your house is more important than that.
Wildfires mean not just flames, but smoke as well. We'll explain how smoke can impact your health and what you can do to keep the air inside your home safe. To get the latest wildfire information, be sure to download the KREM 2 app and turn on your push alerts. That way we can send you important details about wildfires and evacuations here in the Inland Northwest. Welcome back. While the flames from wildfires might not directly impact you, there's no escaping the smoke. You've probably seen the air quality index, but what does it mean? Let's break it down. Green and yellow are the most common, with the air having almost no impact on your health. Orange is unhealthy for sensitive groups, meaning more vulnerable people, such as older adults, might be affected. When the air quality drops to red, the air can have negative health effects for most people. Once we reach purple, there's a health alert for very unhealthy air. And the final category is maroon, which is hazardous. But what do these categories look like in real life? Let's turn to meteorologist Thomas Patrick for an explanation.
So how much wildfire smoke does it take to make our atmosphere unhealthy? Well, consider this. How much salt would it take to make this glass of water undrinkable? Well, the same applies in the atmosphere, but on a much smaller scale. The EPA recommends that our atmosphere be filled with no more than 35 micrograms worth of particulate matter over the space of a cubic meter. Anything below that will give us acceptable air quality. Anything above that gives us an AQI of 100. But a grain of salt weighs 60 micrograms. If we had that much wildfire smoke in the atmosphere, well, that puts the AQI at 150, which puts us in the unhealthy category. 5 grains of salt worth of wildfire smoke then makes that AQI jump to 350, which puts it in the hazardous category. Of course, wildfire particles are on a much smaller scale than even a grain of salt, meaning there's a lot more of them in the atmosphere. And that's why it smells so smoky and appears as foggy.
So now that we understand the dangers from wildfire smoke, what can you do to protect yourself? Mark Hanrahan verifies one way to reduce your risk.
Can air conditioners really filter out smoke from wildfires? Let's verify. Our sources are the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers, the California Air Resources Board, and the Environmental Protection Agency. You'll probably see the most smoke in the air while a fire is burning, but the California Air Resources Board says smoke and the pollutants it contains can linger in the air for weeks or even months. The EPA recommends keeping the windows closed to limit how much smoke gets into your home, but even then, smoke can still get inside through fans that vent to the outside or through small openings and cracks around windows and doors. This is where our sources say a window or split system AC can help. They cool indoor air by first running it through a filter. Filters are rated from 1 to 16 on a scale called MERV. A higher number means the filter is more effective at catching toxins like those found in smoke. And the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers tells Verify you'll need a filter with a MERV rating of at least 13 to help during wildfire conditions, and you'll need to replace it often. So we can verify, yes, air conditioners can filter out wildfire smoke from within your home.
Thank you for joining us for this KREM 2 News special, Ready for Wildfires. For up-to-date information on wildfires in the Inland Northwest, keep it here on KREM 2 News. And remember, our latest newscast and my forecast are available to watch anytime on KREM 2 Plus. Download it now for free streaming. I'm Chief Meteorologist Jeremy LaGoo. Thanks for watching.